Years back, I had an old Impreza. That was my car. I got a new car, so I decided to sell the Impreza on Craigslist. This was before Facebook Marketplace was popular, and to me, Craigslist seemed like the best option for getting the most money I could for my car. If I traded it into a dealer or dealership, I would probably get next to nothing. And I already had another car, so I took some pictures and then listed it online. The way Craigslist works, or at least worked back then, was you would create a simple listing and your phone number would be at the bottom. Anybody could contact you about what you were selling, either via text or call. So the first few days after I made the listing, I wasn't getting much interest. The car was sort of old, but it worked fine and ran well. I thought that maybe the asking price was too high, but I kept the listing up and didn't change the price because I wasn't in a huge hurry to sell. I did get, I think it was 2 texts and 1 call, but each time, they stopped responding pretty quickly and never seemed that interested. Then, after the car had been up for like a week, I got another text about it. The person said, "Is your Impreza still for sale?" I said, yes it is. Then the person said that they were interested in it. I asked if they wanted to look at the car and maybe test drive it, and the person said yes. So I asked when to try to arrange a time. I knew nothing about this person because they didn't give me a name or anything. However, after I asked when they wanted to look at the car, they stopped responding for several days. I got no texts at all. I was disappointed and figured that they just lost interest in the car for whatever reason. For the next few days after that, I got no texts or calls regarding the car. I was starting to forget about it because, like I said, I wasn't in a huge hurry to sell it. So now it was like a week after I had last heard from the person, or anybody else, for that matter, about my car. I lived alone at the time in a smaller house that I was renting. It was nighttime, sort of late, about 10 o'clock, and I was in the living room. I got a text, and it was from the same person who had been texting with me about the car. He sent a picture of the car for sale as it sat in my driveway, right by my house. This was not the picture from the Craigslist listing. This looked like a picture that had been taken about right now. The place that the person had taken the picture from was, well, in my driveway and on my property. I looked at the picture and was very confused. I finally texted back and said, "Are you at my house right now?" pretty quickly. The person responded, saying, "I'm here to look at the car. Where are you?" I knew that I had never arranged the details of a time or date to look at the car with this person. I also realized that I had never given them my address, and it wasn't on the listing either. Plus, it was late at night, for crying out loud. I asked the person how they got my address. They did not respond to this. Moments later, I heard a knock at the front door. I was not within view to see the door or out any of the windows. Plus, they were thankfully all covered entirely. I was curious as to who was there, but I didn't really want to open the door. I stood there trying to decide what my best option was. Then the person tried opening my front door, which was locked. I tried calling them on the phone, but they declined the call. The knocking at the door got louder. By now, I was really creeped out. I went over to a front window and very carefully looked out of it. I saw some guy standing there on the front step. He was sort of large, but I couldn't see his face. It was really dark out, so I didn't get much. Then finally, he turned and started walking away. I moved away from the window again, so that he wouldn't see me. A short time later, I heard a loud noise, like something was being hit. Then I heard a car driving away down the street. I went and looked out the window, and he was gone. I went to text the guy again, asking what that was all about, but he blocked my number. The next day, I went outside and saw a visible dent in the door of the Impreza. I'm pretty sure that the guy kicked it or hit it somehow, and that's the sound that I heard before he left. It made me angry, and I reported his number to Craigslist. This incident prompted me to get security cameras. It also made me remove my Craigslist listing, and I ended up selling my car to a dealer. Since that experience, the man never returned. I have used Craigslist a couple of times since, but not much, and not to buy or sell a vehicle. If anybody out there listening uses Craigslist or Facebook Marketplace, please be careful. This story takes place back when I was in college. I attended a large university that was a couple of hours from where I'm from. I had lived in the dorms with my roommate, Rachel, the previous year. The two of us decided to rent a small college house together for that upcoming school year. We were able to find a place that was cheap and that we could afford, but it didn't come with any furniture, so we had to get some. Mostly, we would look on Craigslist for either free or really cheap furniture. After getting the lease for the house in June, we got a couple of things over the summer. At one point, close to the start of the school year, I still needed a desk and was looking around Craigslist. I found one that I really liked, and it was also really cheap, so I reached out to the seller via text and let them know that I was interested. The seller responded, asking me several questions, which I found odd. He asked for my name, age, and why I wanted to buy the desk, and he made it clear that his price was not negotiable. I figured that he was just super organized or something, and I had no interest in negotiating either. I mean, the desk was like $20, so it was already a good deal. I texted him the information, and he texted back saying that his name was John Smith, which also seemed odd. I mean, that kind of seems like a fake name to me. Anyway, he said that I could come by and buy the desk the following evening between 7 o'clock and 9 o'clock. He also said that he would help me bring the desk to my car. It was a pretty large desk, and I had cleared out the back of my SUV for furniture I got. I told John Smith that I would just bring my roommate, and it would be fine. He said no, not to bring her, and that it was no problem for him to help. This seemed strange to me as well, which only made me want to bring Rachel even more, so I told her about it, and she agreed that it seemed sketchy. I should have just forgotten the whole thing and not gotten the desk, but it was a really nice desk, and I wanted to get it. I was young and dumb, and I felt that nothing would go wrong. So the following evening, we drove to the address that was provided. We got there shortly after 7 o'clock, and it was a fairly average-looking neighborhood. It was maybe 10 minutes from campus and was pretty quiet, with many houses that had fairly large yards. I texted the owner, John Smith, that I was there. He told me to go inside the house and that the desk was inside. Rachel stayed in the car, and I told her that if I needed her help, I would let her know. I walked up to the front door and knocked. John Smith opened it and told me to come in. He appeared to be in his 60s, had a mustache and a sloppy-looking beard, and smelled like cigarettes and beer. I walked inside the house and stood in the living room. I did not see the desk there, and John Smith informed me that it was in the basement. This made me want to leave immediately. If he knew he was selling it, why would he not at least bring it upstairs? I was annoyed but said okay. He claimed that he was sorry and that he just forgot to bring it upstairs. He said that he also needed help bringing it up the stairs. So, against my better judgment, I followed him over to the basement door. He opened it, and it revealed a staircase going down to an unfinished basement. It was really dark down there, with not much light at all. This only made me more nervous. The man started walking down the stairs, and I followed him into the unfinished basement. There were some boxes and junk scattered around, but overall not too many things. When we got to the bottom of the stairs, we walked a little ways into the basement. I looked around and finally spotted the desk that I was buying. It was completely backed against the corner of the basement, far away. This was odd, because the listing for the desk showed it being in a room with natural light. I remembered that, so it had to have been upstairs. The man then started walking away. Not toward the desk though, but toward the stairs. He then started to walk up them. I was confused and also really nervous as the man was making it to the top of the stairs. I didn't know what was going on. Just then, I heard a sudden knocking from the front door of the house. It had to be Rachel. The man stopped on the stairs, looked back at me, and in an angry tone asked, "Who is that?" I was speechless in the moment, and without me even answering, the man quickly turned back and walked up the rest of the stairs and left the basement. I followed and quickly went up the stairs, making my way to the main floor. When we both got back upstairs, the man walked over to the front door. I was trying to quickly go over there as well. Sure enough, Rachel was standing there at the door. She was still knocking, and knocking rather loudly. The man opened up the door and angrily asked her who she was and what she wanted. Without letting her respond, he told her to leave. Rachel said she was my roommate, and I walked over and went past the guy. He angrily yelled at me and said that I was supposed to come alone. I didn't want to argue with the guy or anything. I just quickly walked past him, and Rachel and I then ran through the guy's yard and back to the car. He was yelling and cursing at us the whole time. Then we left and drove back home. By the time we returned, the Craigslist listing was deleted. I still made a report to Craigslist about him though. I'm guessing that John Smith was not his real name, but I do have his address. I never heard anything more, so I don't know if anything was done about him. I guess technically he didn't commit any crime, but it was sure as sketchy as can be. The fact that he wanted me to come alone was a major red flag. I should have never gone there, and I'm glad that Rachel came to the door when she did. She told me that she just had a bad feeling about it, and that it seemed to be taking a long time, so she decided to just knock on the door and see how it was going. But when nobody answered the door for a while, she started loudly knocking. Thankfully, it worked. When I was 18 years old, I was living with my parents, and it was the summertime. I had just finished my first year of college and didn't really have any money. I was looking for a summer job but having a hard time finding one. My parents were divorced, so I would live with my mom most of the time, but would stay with my dad for a few days here and there. I remember that I really wanted money, and I decided to go on Craigslist to see if there were any odd jobs that I could do. They have a job section on the website for both temporary and permanent jobs. Most of the temporary jobs are things like yard work projects or helping people move, things like that. I saw one that seemed really easy. The ad simply said, * watch my house when I'm away. * I clicked on the ad to learn more, and to be 100% honest, my instinct told me right away that it seemed a little weird. There were a couple of pictures of the inside of this house, but not much information was given. However, what was given was the price that the owner would pay, and I don't remember exactly what it was, but it was pretty good. It was 2 nights staying at the house and watching it for probably like $400 or something. I responded quickly because it seemed like easy cash. The only thing I would have to do was live in some random person's house for 2 days and then get paid good money. The house didn't look super fancy or anything from the pictures. It just looked pretty average. I texted the owner and said that I was interested in the job. After texting back and forth for like 10 minutes with the guy, he said that I could have the job. So a few days later, I went to his house. I didn't tell either of my parents, and I was staying at my dad's at the time. I told him I was going to a friend's for a couple of nights. My mom was way more strict than my dad, and I knew she would have asked a bunch of questions, but my dad just said, * cool, have fun. * I knew my parents would not have let me do it if I told them, but I was thinking that it would be fine, and I really wanted the money. After I got to the address, which was like 15 minutes away, the house looked pretty average. In fact, if anything, it didn't really look that nice. The neighborhood had a decent number of houses, and it seemed pretty quiet. I knocked on the door, and a man answered. His name was Mike. He was like 50 or so, and said that he was going out of town for a few days. The only instructions he gave me were to watch the place and to stay there and sleep in the guest room. That was it. He didn't have any pets or plants, so I wasn't sure why I had to watch the house. Maybe he just wanted peace of mind, knowing that somebody was there, and he had the money to pay for it. Then he gave me a set of keys and left. It seemed kind of weird, but it was alright with me. The house was kind of small and not that nice. It had just one level and then a basement, which I didn't bother to go down and look at. There was a living room, dining room, kitchen, bathroom, and 2 bedrooms. There was not a whole lot of furniture either, but enough to be comfortable. I sat on the couch in the living room and went on my phone and watched TV. I looked around a little bit in the kitchen, and there was basically no food. So at one point I went out and got some. I came back and continued to just relax on the couch. I was still there when it got to be late at night. Aside from the TV, it was very quiet. I was not used to it being so quiet, because both of my parents have pets, and I also have siblings. So as I sat there on the couch about to go to sleep at like 11 p.m., I suddenly heard what sounded like somebody in the basement. It was footsteps walking around down there. Right away, it really spooked me. I didn't know what that could possibly be. I was too scared to go down and investigate. I got up from the couch and just stood there, but the noises seemed to stop after that. I stayed on the couch, listening and watching the TV to take my mind off it. The noises were really not that loud, but it definitely seemed like somebody had been walking around down there. After like 10 minutes, I heard the footsteps again. This time, they started coming up the stairs. There was no mistaking it this time, because I heard the creaking of the stairs as they walked up. I was terrified. I got up and ran into the guest bedroom and shut the door. I listened closely, but I didn't hear anybody walking around anymore. This was too weird, so I texted the owner. I didn't care if I was bothering him so late at night. It was creeping me out so much that I was literally about to just leave and go home. Surprisingly, the owner texted me back pretty quickly. I had told him that I thought I heard someone in the basement, and I was really creeped out. He told me that it was just his roommate, Cole. This made me really confused. He had not mentioned at all before that he had a roommate living in the basement, and if he did have a roommate, why would he need somebody else to watch the house? I sat there thinking about it for a minute, but I decided that perhaps he didn't like his roommate, or was afraid that his roommate would steal his stuff or something. I was just trying to make sense of it in my mind. So I left the bedroom and walked around the house. Nobody was there at all. I did not go in the basement though. I figured that Carl was down there. I didn't hear any more noises from the basement either. I guessed that Carl must have gone to bed. So then I went back to the guest bedroom to try to go to sleep. I felt better at that point, and after a little while, was able to fall asleep. However, I awoke sometime later. I knew that it was still the middle of the night, and I was suddenly wide awake. I didn't hear anything, but I looked around. All the lights were off, but when I looked to the doorway, I saw it. Mike, the owner of the house, was standing right outside my bedroom door and looking at me. As soon as I saw him, he quickly moved away. There was no mistaking it though. I knew what I saw. I was so freaked out, but I didn't know what to do. I ran over to the door and closed it. Then I turned on the lights. I heard a door closing in the distance, but I don't know which one it was. After not hearing anything for a couple of minutes, I decided that I was getting out of there. I gathered all my things, ran out of the room, and left. I didn't see or hear anyone in the house as I did. I drove back to my dad's and got home at like 4 a.m. the next morning. I told my dad that I had just gone back early from my friends. I figured he would freak out if he heard what happened. I was just glad that I made it out of there okay. And I never got another text from Mike at all. I realized that he probably never left. I don't think he had a roommate either. I think Mike was the person who I heard in the basement, and he made up the story about having a roommate. The Craigslist ad was gone when I looked back online. I stayed off Craigslist after that. Those events scared me from using Craigslist, and I've stuck to real jobs since then. A couple of years ago, I was looking for a new car. I looked on Craigslist because I feel that they usually have the best deals. You have to shop around and look for sometimes a couple of weeks, but eventually you can get a great deal. So I found one car that I thought might work for me. The price was good, and everything in the ad seemed legit. It wasn't an eye-popping great deal or anything, but it seemed like a very reasonable listing. I texted the owner and said that I was interested. We met up one of the next days. I think we met in a store parking lot somewhere nearby. After looking at the car, I wanted to take a test drive to make sure that it drove well. The owner was this guy. I think his name was like Jeff or Jordan, or something with a J, but anyways, he was tall, kind of thin, had glasses, and really dark hair. He asked if I wanted to go for a test drive, but then he wouldn't let me drive it. I went around to go to the driver's side, and he told me no, and told me to go to the passenger seat. So I went around and got in there, and I guess that he wanted to show me that the car ran well. However, he didn't want me to drive it for some reason. So we left the parking lot and began driving down the road. I figured maybe he was just overprotective about his stuff, but this guy started to drive really far away. At first, I didn't realize, because I was trying to pay attention to how the car ran. I was more concerned that he might be trying to scam me or something, because he wasn't letting me drive. Soon though, we had been driving for like 10 minutes at least, and he hadn't turned around or anything. He seemed like he knew where he was going, like he wasn't just casually driving around and making random turns. Nearby the parking lot, he was pretty much just going straight down this one quiet road. We got farther and farther away, and he wasn't saying anything. I told him that we could go back now. The guy said that he wanted to show me how good the car was. I said, I can see it's good. You can take it back now. He said, just 1 second, and then kept driving. We drove in silence for the next couple of minutes. After a while, I couldn't take it anymore, and I asked him to turn around, and he said, just a minute. Again, I waited, and still nothing. This was starting to feel really sketchy. I told him that I wanted to go back now, and he completely ignored me. I didn't know what I could do though. He was driving way too fast to just jump out of the car, and I could not try to fight him. I'm a woman who's barely 5'2", and this guy was about 6 feet tall and probably a lot stronger. He turned at one point and went down another random road. This one was also very quiet, and then he kept driving down it. I took out my phone, and I had no signal. Thanks, T-Mobile. After driving for about another 5 minutes, I saw something up ahead. It was a police car on the right side of the road. I'm not sure if he was trying to pull over speeders or what, because there were no other cars or people nearby. It was just a cop parked on the side of the road. As we approached the cop, I knew that we were going to drive right past him. I tried to roll my window down, but just when it started to go down, it stopped. I realized that the guy driving had disabled my window. Then he rolled it all the way back up. We were getting closer to the cop. Right before we got to him, I started frantically waving to the cop like crazy. I hoped that he would notice when I did. The guy driving told me to stop and started cursing at me. He tried to grab me, and we swerved the car a little. After we drove past the cop, I looked in the mirror and saw the police car start to pull out. Then the blue lights went on. I felt a huge wave of relief. The guy driving asked me what was wrong with me and why I did that stuff. I told him that I just wanted to get out of there. The man pulled over and claimed that he did nothing wrong, but this so-called test drive had been going on for like 30 minutes, and a whole 20 minutes after I told him that I didn't want to go any further and to turn back. After pulling over, a police officer came out and approached us. He asked what was going on and why I was waving frantically, and if everything was okay. The guy driving quickly started talking and said we were on a test drive and that I was acting crazy for no reason. I said that I just wanted to get out of the car and leave. The man said no. It's funny how suddenly now he was talking, but when I was asking him to turn around and stuff, He was either completely ignoring me and not talking at all, or just giving basic small responses. Anyways, the cop said that the man was not allowed to hold me against my will, and the guy finally led me out of the car at that point. I explained to the police officer what happened, and he ran the man's ID. Another police officer was called to the scene. In the end, they sadly ended up letting the man go. They gave me a ride back to my car though, and made sure he didn't follow me. Then I went back home. I reported the guy to Craigslist and haven't seen him since. I also haven't gone back on Craigslist since then. This is my Craigslist horror story. I wanted to buy a TV from there last year. I saw an ad for a nice TV that looked pretty new. It was an LG, and the price was really good, a lot cheaper than you can get at the store. It was also a pretty new TV, and I figured that I would be getting a great bargain. So I reached out to the guy selling it and told him that I would buy it. He said okay and gave me his address, instructing me to come by the next night at 9 o'clock. It was cool with me, so I went over there the next evening. I arrived on time, and it was this sketchy neighborhood, but to be honest, mine isn't that much better, so I wasn't tripping or anything. I parked my car, got out, walked up to the door, and knocked. Within a minute, the door opened, and this dude with a t-shirt, jeans, and a cap answered. I told him that I was there to buy the TV, and he let me in the house. He first asked for the money almost right away, which I had on me. I was about to give it to him, and I saw the TV sitting right there on the floor. But it was not the same TV from the ad. Most TVs look alike, so I was nearly fooled. But I've had quite a few TVs in my day, and I picked up on it. This one was slightly smaller than advertised, and it was also not the right brand. I was buying an LG, and I could see that this was some off-brand crap that probably didn't even work. If it did, the picture quality was probably terrible. I said, "Wait a minute, this isn't the right TV." I hoped that maybe the guy was selling multiple TVs and just got them mixed up, but he quickly said that this was the right TV and sounded almost angry. He told me to take it and started picking it up. I told him, "No, I don't want that cheap knockoff crap." The guy said, "A deal's a deal," and started telling me to give him the money. I said, "No." The deal was for an LG. That's what was advertised. I then asked him straight up if he even had the LG TT that was advertised. The guy said that he didn't know what I was talking about, and insisted this was the TV from the ad, that he had advertised it the whole time. At that point, I just decided to leave. I told him he could scam somebody else and walked out the door. The guy started following me, telling me to give him his money. I didn't see a weapon or anything, and I don't think he had one. At least I hope not. So I left the guy's house and went into his front yard to go to my car. The guy also left the house and started following me into the yard. At that point, I started running. I sprinted to my car, quickly unlocked it, and got inside. The man started running after me. I drove away as fast as I could. The guy ran all the way out to the street after me, but he wasn't able to quite reach me, thankfully. I went back home and looked at the ad again. It was still up, and it was still advertised as an LG, which was larger and not at all the same as the TV he tried to sell me. I'm glad I got out of there. Next time I buy something on Craigslist, I'm not entering anybody's house, and I'm not showing them any money until I see that it's not a scam.